Okay, so I will get properly started then. So the goal of this webinar really is, as I said, to talk about our fair trade and climate justice campaign overall, but specifically to tell you about what's the next phase of it really, which is this Protecting Forests with Farmers petition, and tell you a few ways that you can get involved in that. So if we can go on to the next slide, please, Elena. And I've kind of said that bit. And yeah, if we can go on to the next one, possibly one more. Yeah, one more. There we go. No, sorry, just go back one. Thanks. Yes, so I think to start, so people sometimes wonder, well, why are we talking about deforestation? That's not a core fair trade issue. Historically, people sometimes think, but actually, we really see climate justice as being at the heart of the trade justice mission that fair trade and campaigners like you have been driving for the past 30 years. And longer. Deforestation is a major cause of the climate change that threatens the future of so many farmers, smallholder farmers around the world, in the same way that unfair trade threatens their future. But deforestation is also a symptom of these two broader problems that are at the heart of fair trade's mission: trade justice and climate justice. So as you may have seen, it's 30 years since the first fair trade products appeared on UK supermarket shelves. And for 30 years, people in the UK, like you, have been buying fair trade products because they know when they do that, it's a commitment to a fairer, better system for farmers who are exploited by a rigged global trade system that favours the wealthiest. And that's really has made a difference. It's worth emphasising that 1.7 billion globally in fair trade premium generated. And that means that's countless communities have been transformed, and a transformation driven by farmers themselves who can choose how to spend that extra money because people like yourselves have chosen fair trade products. So that's so many farms made sustainable. It's all the fair trade projects we know about of investing in local medical care, in education, in all sorts of services. So it really has made a difference. But we also know that global trade is still not fair. Our goal isn't just to sell more fair trade products in the next 30 years, it's to make all products fair, to make trade fair. And this all links to climate change because while farmers aren't able to earn enough for essentials like medical care, like enough food, like clean water for the communities, if you can't pay for that, you definitely can't invest to take on the effects of climate change and prevent deforestation. So it's also worth saying that climate change itself isn't fair. Small scale farmers who did the least to cause the climate crisis are the same communities that are feeling its worst effects. Many fair trade crops are particularly vulnerable to changes in weather, like cocoa and coffee. And that means that livelihoods, but also lives actually are being lost right now to extreme weather, as we see families and whole communities pushed to the brink. Practically, what does that look like? It means climate change is making it harder and harder for farmers to grow their crops. Plant diseases are becoming more common. Disasters like floods and droughts are more frequent and less predictable. And the regions where fair trade works, the regions that are most affected by unfair rigged trade, are also often the regions most affected by climate change. So West Africa, South America, have seen disproportionate impacts of climate change. And yes, and who has been causing the climate crisis is, of course, primarily the world's wealthiest. So there's lots of stats on this, but to take one example, the highest earning 1% are responsible for the same level of emissions as the lowest earning 5 billion people, which is quite stark. But the good news is, and we will be exploring a lot of the good news this evening, is that Fairtrade farmers are already taking action. So many small-scale farmers and workers in those countries most affected by climate change are often experts in adapting to climate change. You know, they work with this land every day, and they understand the problems and they understand what needs to change. But as I say, unfair trade means they just don't have the money to invest in sustainable farming techniques that could secure a fairer, greener future for people and planet and for the world's food supply. So throughout 2024, we will be encouraging people to join us and join Fairtrade farmers in taking action. And last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, we launched our Protect Forests with Farmers petition as a first step in that campaign. And we'll also be encouraging people like yourselves to take grassroots community action throughout the year in Great Big Green Week and Fairtrade Fortnight, and whenever you like, really. Because by getting involved, you'll be amplifying the message that when you choose Fairtrade, you're part of making changes, you're part of making change happen. So Fairtrade can offer a fairer deal to more Fairtrade farmers, and so they can have the money and resources they need to really take on climate change. And I think if we go to the next slide, I can tell you a bit more about what those what we're asking for in our petition. So sorry, I just lost my place there. Yeah. Okay. So what we're asking for is 2 main things, really. We're asking for the government to deliver on funding it has promised small-scale farmers to tackle deforestation. So at least the £500 million that has already been promised. Really, there needs to be a lot more funding than that, but that would be a great first step to have that delivered. And we want farmers to be supported to, as it says, tackle the root causes of deforestation by developing locally led solutions. So farmers should also have a say in how that money is used, and in fact should drive how that money is used to tackle deforestation. So delivery of funding is one, and the other equally as important is that deforestation legislation laws that are coming in the next couple of months, we expect, should ensure that the cost and burden of tackling deforestation is not imposed on small-scale farmers, but as it rightly should do, sits with the companies who are making the most profits in the supply chain, and with countries, nation states as well. So we need to outlaw deforestation, but it shouldn't be the small-scale farmers. Our Fairtrade movement exists to stand with that have to meet all the costs of that, and that should be met by the companies with the deepest pockets. Cool. Shall we go on to the next slide, please?
I don't know if there's a bit of a delay when I press, but deforestation is my section now. So thanks, Stefan.
Yeah.
I'm going to be talking a little bit more about forests now, why they're so important, their threats, and some of the fair trade programs to protect them. So I'm going to take you through a few slides. It sort of is a reason why we've got this petition, why it's so important. We all rely on forests. Forests are home to around 80% of land-based animals and plants. They generate the oxygen that we breathe. They have a vital role to play in the fight against global warming. Around 300 million people live in forests, and about 1.6 billion people depend on forests for their livelihood. biggest threats to forests are climate change, the expansion of agricultural land, infrastructure development, mining, and fire. Illegal logging is one of the most serious threats. It's been responsible for driving some wildlife towards extinction and depriving forest communities from vital resources. The world's huge demand for wood, paper, and agricultural products has led to some shocking and unsustainable management of forests. Too many forests are being dangerously damaged or completely destroyed. Although the annual rate of net global deforestation has slowed down in recent years, forests continue to be under serious threat. As well as the Fairtrade certification, there's a range of programs designed to tackle deforestation. Programs are usually funded through a combination of commercial partners, cooperatives, and Fairtrade, often with institutional funding. With more resources, more cooperatives could benefit from these initiatives. For example, some examples of programs that support Fairtrade standards in relation to deforestation are the access to farm geolocation and satellite monitoring data and the tools for cooperatives to manage this data, the promotion of smallholder farmers as forest protectors, education about environmental risks relating to deforestation, and training on agroecology principles. Since 2020, Fairtrade has been using geolocation. This involves working with different cooperatives to collect and analyze data that can be used in decision-making, in particular in relation to the monitoring and prevention of deforestation. This information is critical for cooperatives' market access, as it provides a better understanding of the risk and allows risk management and prevention. Cooperatives choose who they share this information with. For example, they can share it with their trade partners. More recently, Fairtrade has established a partnership with Satelligence, a leader in satellite deforestation tracking that will allow producer organizations to access the data and to act on risk identification. This initiative aims to connect Fairtrade cooperatives with data on the member farms and the deforestation risk, so the cooperatives can share the data with the commercial partners and better manage forest landscapes. The narrative of smallholders solely as a risk to forests does not match the reality. Our experience is that smallholders and the communities they live in are conscious of the value of the forests to them and the wider global communities. However, poverty can increase the risk to forests. This example here, Betman, is part of the cooperative Acopacro and is an organization of small specialty cocoa producers. They produce organic and fair trade in the central Huallaga Valley, San Martin region of Peru. And they have more than 2,000 members. Since 2008, they have planted more than 3 million trees on degraded and cultivated land, practicing agroforestry and financing themselves through the sale of carbon credits and crop certification. Fairtrade is committed to climate education and strengthening smallholder farmers' resilience. One example of this is by establishing leadership schools in Bolivia, Ecuador, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Nicaragua. They have trained, through this program, they have trained 112 smallholder farmers in climate change and mitigation strategies, including crop cover, the use of organic fertilizers, drip irrigation, and agroforestry. And Miriam here is one of the participants in this, in one of these leadership schools. There are many examples of ways in which Fairtrade is training on agroecology principles. Through agroecology training, thousands of Fairtrade farmers have benefited from knowledge and techniques for implementing agroecological practices, such as soil and water conservation practices, agroforestry, and sustainable energy. There are many examples of cooperatives around the world using agroecology principles to replace the use of synthetic fertilizers by organic ones. This benefits not just the soil and the water systems, but the health of the farmers. The Green Project in Uganda is a shining example of this success. Through targeted training initiatives, more than 17,000 smallholder farmers have benefited from the knowledge and techniques for implementing agroecological principles. So this is just a bit of a summary of why forests are so important and everything that Fairtrade is already doing, or the Fairtrade farmers are doing in tackling deforestation and climate change. And now I'm going to pass you to Sarah, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the petition. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Elena. So yeah, that was a really helpful recap of the campaign so far and deforestation and what Fairtrade farmers are really doing to already fight deforestation. This next part of the presentation, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our spring climate stories. So within this, we've got 3 new case studies from across Fairtrade smallholder farmers that we'd like to share with you. And I'm going to talk you through some of these case studies. And then on the final one, we're going to play a little video as well so that you can hear straight from the Fairtrade farmers. The idea behind these climate stories is that you can read them, you can learn more about deforestation and how farmers are protecting forests, but you can also, in the days after this webinar, download them and you can use them if you're in your local community or your local schools to really outline the real stories of deforestation when it comes to fair trade. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Elena. So our first climate story is Hame. A lot of you may have seen this story through our petition. He is the farmer who is on our petition page, and he is a fair trade coffee farmer from the Red Ecosera Coffee Fair Trade Cooperative in Colombia. I'm going to tell you a little bit about James. In recent decades, he told us that temperatures have gone up so much that he can no longer grow coffee in the lower parts of his land because it's so hot, and he's had to replace his coffee bushes with cocoa. Hamid tells us that we're in danger because of climate change, because we used to think that it was something existential and far away, but now we can tell it's really here. That the temperatures today are so different to how they were 20, let alone 30 years ago. Farmers are the first to feel the climate change, and it's going to be very hard to continue to produce coffee. Now we know that climate change has arrived. When you download this resource, you'll be able to see some direct quotes from James as well. So he tells us a very clear message to the British public that we need more businesses to pay higher prices and to value the work that farmers and workers do, given the higher production costs that come with climate change. And it's very important to support good quality organic coffee, which allows farmers to protect the environment and remain in business. James and other farmers from the cooperative have made lots of different climate adaptations, including introducing agroforestry systems, shade-grown crops, soil-friendly bioproducts, forest conservation projects, and lots of other eco-services as well. And from all these different adaptations, we can see that habitat restoration, beneficial microorganisms in the soil, and better fertilizer management have been direct outputs. And alongside this, constant monitoring and training by the technical team has allowed the cooperative to expand its service portfolio and provide support and advice to other organisations of small producers in the local area as well. So when we share these resources after the webinar, you'll be able to download James' full story, and there'll also be a link to a video as well where you could hear directly from him. Moving on to the next case study, please. So this is the story of John and his climate story with the Sankofa project. When John first inherited his father's land after he'd passed, he cut all the timber trees down because he needed money. And he tells us that in my father's time, there were lots of timber and shade trees on the farm, but as young men who didn't know better, they cut them down. And then years later, whilst taking part in a dynamic agroforestry farming, he was able to return to his father's approach by planting lots of timber trees to provide crucial shade for his cocoa to thrive. And this is exactly what Project Sankofa is trying to achieve, a more natural, traditional approach to farming. He tells us that before the dynamic agroforestry farming, he really struggled without shade trees, but now they're back to farming the traditional way. And Sankofa actually means going back to our roots and looking back for lost knowledge. So that's why this particular project is really important. Project's also scaling up other diversified food systems, which involves integrating other non-tree crops such as cowpea, taro root and cassava within a broader base of farmers, aiming to span at least 2,500 households. So with these dynamic agroforestry practices and diversified production systems, the risk of deforestation can be mitigated and the biodiversity of forests can be promoted. So that's another really lovely fair trade farmer who is protecting forests locally. And then I'll have one more case study to share with you all. And I'm going to go through this one really quickly because we've got a video that we're going to play for you. So this case study is all about Marisol, whose farming has been in her family for generations. She also inherited her farm, and when she did, she gave up her job as a business administrator to carry on the family tradition. She joined the Copro Agro Cooperative in the Dominican Republic, and she's been farming fair trade cocoa for over a decade. And in that time, she's really embraced every opportunity to protect her local environment and take on the protecting the effects against climate change. Marisol tells us that I've taken on the role as a leader and I've gained lots of knowledge about organic practices that I wasn't familiar with. I learned all about fair trade, which has a really big impact on me. The impact of climate change on Marisol's farm is huge. It threatens her entire future as a cocoa farmer. And lots of her fellow cocoa farmers also face the same threat, with cocoa being especially vulnerable to climate change. She tells us that with climate change, the way of life has changed. We don't know when we will harvest or when the harvest will take place. We're uncertain when there'll be rain and when there'll be drought, so we're so out of sync. But there's been lots of really positive things that have come through being part of the Fair Trade Cooperative. She tells us that there's a project called Resilient Cocoa for Climate Change, which has helped in replanting old trees. Also, they're not monoculture, but grow diverse crops within the cocoa production. And all of these projects are funded from the Fair Trade Premium. So the Fair Trade Premium is generated by people like you who buy Fair Trade. So all of us are really part of Marisol's hard work to protect the environment. And on that, I'm just going to show you a video clip. Please bear with me on the tech for 1 second.
So I don't think we've got the sound. Oh, no, there it goes. Carry on.
Por motivo de herencia, esto viene de generación en generación. Yo, siendo administradora de empresa, decidí venir a la finca. Llegué a Coproagro en el 2012. Desde que llegué, fui llegando como directiva y logré obtener mucho conocimiento que no lo sabía de todos los pasos orgánicos. Además, conocí por ahí de Fairtrade, lo cual ha sido un impacto para mí. Con el cambio climático, la forma de vida ha cambiado. Ahora no sabemos ni cuándo vamos a cosechar, ni cuándo se va a descosechar, porque lamentablemente tenemos una revolución de que no sabemos cuándo va a haber lluvia, no sabemos cuándo va a haber la seca, entonces estamos como dislocados. Tenemos un proyecto donde dice que se llama Cacao Resiliente, para el cambio climático, el cual no ha ayudado porque estamos reponiendo aquellas matas añejadas con producción nueva y de buena calidad. Además, adicional, varias, que no solo sea un monocultivo, sino variación, donde podemos también tener otro tipo de cultivo dentro de la producción de cacao. Ha sido un proyecto financiado por la certificación Fairtrade. Nosotras como mujeres no vemos un incremento de la demanda, no podemos ponernos a trabajar con la producción de cacao. Es decir, que tenemos que tener un valor agregado para que nos motive a seguir trabajando con la producción y que otras mujeres vengan de regreso a nuestro campo. El cacao orgánico, claro que sí, que es mucho mejor. Le da mejor calidad tanto al ser humano y también a nivel mundial, a nivel de la biodiversidad. Yo me siento muy orgullosa de que mi cooperativa Coproagro tenga la certificación de Fairtrade, ya que ha sido el impacto grande que hemos tenido nosotros los productores por vender nuestro cacao con la certificación de Fairtrade. Ha mejorado las vidas de muchos productores de nuestra cooperativa, también ha mejorado la vida no solamente de los productores, sino de la comunidad completa de cada distrito, en mejoramiento de caminos vecinales, en electrificación, y esos distritos, cada uno ha llevado un aporte, la prima que nosotros tenemos por tener la certificación de Fairtrade. Yo les exhorto a los que consumen el chocolate con la certificación Fairtrade que sepan y que lo coman deliciosamente, porque ellos están aprobando el dulce chocolate de un amargo trabajo que realizamos los productores para conseguir el mejor beneficio por la certificación Fairtrade.
Amazing. Elena, if you wouldn't mind screen sharing again. Just while the tech's starting back up, I think these 3 case studies are really lovely thing for us to really understand the climate justice campaign for Fairtrade. And each of the stories have got some absolutely lovely quotes of Fairtrade farmers on how they're feeling about climate change, but also the positives as well around how being a Fairtrade farmer is able to support when facing against climate, the climate crisis in general. So if you go to the next slide, please. So this brings us on to how can you support farmers to protect forests? So as well as signing our online petition, there's also lots of other things that we want to get people involved in throughout the year. If you go to the next slide, please. Yes, so the first is the Fairtrade Protecting Forests with Farmers petition. As you can see here, we're nearly at 10,000 signatures. So thank you for everybody who has signed their name on already. That's absolutely brilliant amount of support. As we have an election here in the UK this year, it's a really important time to be reminding politicians of all parties that we have a responsibility to tackle climate change in a way that supports farmers already living with the worst impact climate. By ensuring that farmers can meet new laws and supporting farmer-led efforts to end deforestation, we can enable forests and communities to thrive together for generations to come. Also, as Stefan spoke you through the legislation earlier in this webinar, we are expecting an environmental piece of legislation to come before Parliament in the next sort of couple of months. So it's really important that we can get as high a number as possible here to really show how many people in the UK are really passionate about protecting forests with Fairtrade farmers. So please do sign. if you have not already, and share with all your friends and family. On to the next slide, please. As well as our online action, we really see our local groups, so our Fairtrade towns, cities, zones, boroughs, our Fairtrade places of worship, schools, colleges, universities. They're an absolutely amazing grassroots presence of Fairtrade campaigners. So we really want to get you involved throughout this year in our climate campaign as well. So first of all, coming here tonight is absolutely the first place to learn more about this. And what we want people to do from here is to download our resources, so our climate stories that you've just heard, as well as we'll be putting out this presentation in a video form so you can download it and share it with your groups. And also, if you want to give this presentation yourself, we'll have a PowerPoint and a script. So what we really want is all of the amazing campaigners to take this campaign and share it among your local communities and really get everyone involved in learning about climate change, climate justice and deforestation in respect to fair trade farmers. And we're asking people to sort of do that over the next couple of months. Maybe it might be you've got a monthly meeting coming up with your local group or an event that you might want to share some of this information at. That would be absolutely brilliant. Next slide, please. So obviously we had this webinar right now for all you to learn about the new campaign, but also our colleague Elena, who is our education manager, is going to be running a teachers webinar later in April. So it is Thursday, the 25th of April at 3:30 p.m. I believe it's 45 minutes. And it is a space for teachers to come along, or any campaigners who regularly go into schools and speak to school-age children. And it will be how to give a fair trade lesson on deforestation and protecting forests. So that if you sign up to that webinar, I believe Stefan's just popped the link in the chat, you'll get the more specific education support with our fair trade online school meeting that Elena is going to run. So really hopeful to see some of you there. And then after that, maybe you could go into local schools and really spread the message with our younger supporters as well. And next, brilliant. So this is just a few dates throughout the year. So obviously we spoke a lot about the petition in this webinar. And also Spring Climate Stories is sort of what we're calling these digital resources that we're giving you through this webinar. So we kind of see that happening throughout all of spring, people learning about the topic and sharing with their local communities. The next sort of big thing on the timeline is Great Big Green Week. So I know that a lot of you might have been involved in Great Big Green Week in previous years. This year, it is the 8th to the 16th of June, and the concept is swaps. So for fair trade, there's a couple of different swaps that you could do. So obviously making the swap on a fair trade product. I know a lot of you in this webinar will already be purchasing and swap to a lot of fair trade anyway, but maybe it might be getting someone that you know to make the swap. But then also we're asking people to do a bit of a knowledge swap as well. So if you are in a local area that maybe has a Friends of the Earth group or a WWF group, Surfers Against Sewage, any local eco groups that you sort of combine during Great Big Green Week and really get to know each other's campaigns and share why Fair Trade Climate Justice campaign is so important. There is also a webinar. Sorry, I feel like I'm giving you so many webinars today, but the Climate Coalition, who runs the Great Big Green Week, are running a webinar on the, I've forgotten now, 30th of April, but I'm sure Stefan will drop the information in the chat. And the idea behind that is lots of the different member groups are coming together to give people ideas on how to organise for Great Big Green Week. So if you're thinking that you'd like to get involved in Great Big Green Week, that would be a really great opportunity to come along and just get some ideas about how to organise. And then finally on this timeline, we've got COP29 at the end of the year in November. Watch this space for more ideas about what's happening then. We haven't got anything official on the website yet, but our petition does specifically speak about funding opportunities that was promised at COP26. So yes, that is a very good opportunity for us to be talking about climate justice. And I think, next slide, I think that might be it. Amazing. And it seems like we've wrapped up a little bit early as well. So I'd like to open the floor a little bit. Maybe Stefan, if you want to.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much, Sarah and Elena, and thanks everyone who put questions in the chat during that. I think I covered most of those off, but do keep adding to it if you have other questions. We also had quite a lot of pre-submitted questions, so I'll maybe start with going over a couple of those. So if I just find my little list of questions, and yes, if you are here, feel free to jump in when I say your question. But the first one we actually had, and I don't think he was able to join, but was from a Fairtrade farmer. So I think that's always worth sharing, called Nimrod Wambete, who some of you might remember came to the UK for Fairtrade Fortnight last year. I don't see him in the chat, so I don't think he's able to make it, but hopefully you're watching the recording, Nimrod. And so his question was, has the EU considered supporting small producer organisations with training grants in the run-up to the new deforestation regulation? Which is a great question. We can't speak too much about the EU legislation, as we're not that across it, not being in the EU anymore. But in the UK, that's really the heart of what our campaign is all about. So asking the government to provide that funding so small producer organisations can do that training and prepare to comply with the legislation. And as Sarah mentioned earlier, that funding has been promised at previous COP summits, including the one in the UK, COP26, a couple of years ago, but hasn't been delivered. So that's really what we're looking to do in this campaign. And we'll hope to see progress this year, really, on that. As the burden certainly shouldn't be on producers like Nimrod to meet these regulations. The other question we had, I think there's an interesting one from Colin Bedios. I hope I'm getting your surname correct there. Which was, how can small farmers and land stewards in Central America be involved in this process? And I think that's maybe not an element of the campaign we spoke about as much, but is really important. It's not just that we want smallholder farmers to get access to the funding that's been promised, but we want them to have a real meaningful say and control over how that funding is used. We know from working with Fairtrade farmers, they often know an awful lot about their land. As I think I mentioned earlier, they know the problems and they know the solutions. It's just a case of having the resources to implement it. So any funding or programs that are designed should really have that locally led Indigenous knowledge at the heart of it, and it should be built in collaboration with small scale farmers. So that's definitely a big part of the campaign. We know it's not always the case when governments want to run big, expensive programs, or companies and they have their own ideas on how to spend money. But yeah, we're really pushing for small-scale farmers and land stewards in Central America and everywhere where Fairtrade operates to be really involved in how we actually tackle deforestation. I'll move to one more pre-submitted one, which was from Michael Keane. Again, not sure if you're in the chat, but Michael Keane, one of our campaigners of the month this year. So congratulations on that as well. And his question was, to what extent are small-scale producers able to plant shade trees and utilise water-saving practices to fight against climate change, considering the small size of their farms? I thought that was a particularly good question, as I suppose there's two main factors really that, because you may have seen in the campaign, planting shade trees is something a lot of Fairtrade producers are doing at the moment, which helps reforest their land and helps protect their crops against the effect of climate change. So very common in coffee farms, for example, where coffee extreme temperatures can damage it, and shade trees can sort of create a microclimate to protect against that. And water saving, like special irrigation practices, obviously helps prevent the damage caused by droughts and things like that, and is also just more efficient and better for the environment. So Michael was basically, I think, asking what are the barriers for small-scale producers doing that. And the key one, as has probably come across here, is often cost. So shade trees and water-saving practices, like he described, are good long-term investments and are environmentally positive, but they're also upfront costs. So like so much, farmers need a fairer income to be able to make those investments to adapt to climate change. And it's so much harder to prioritize stuff like that if you're not earning enough for your absolute basic needs, like medical care, like being able to send all of your children to school. It's just really hard to make those investments, which is why trade justice and climate justice are so linked. And the other thing is training and support to do that. So sometimes producers will need that advice or support to actually implement some of the solutions they know they need to get into place. And around the world are Fairtrade producer networks, which are organisations that operate in Africa, a separate one in Latin America, and a separate one in Asia and the Pacific. They exist really to provide that support for producers and help producers exchange knowledge. So they've been supporting producers towards getting that training in the agroforestry techniques that Elena spoke about earlier, which are specifically designed to support small-scale farmers to farm sustainably in the way that Michael suggested. I'll pause there and just say, is there any sort of live questions in the chat we might want to come back to?
We've got a couple of questions in the chat, Stefan. I think maybe some of them we might have to go away, get some answers and come back to you. One especially about where we're up to with sustainable palm oil. I know that's not a product that we're a commodity that we're specifically looking at the moment. But I don't know, Stefan or Elena, if you have anything you want to add on that one.
Yeah, it's not something, as you say, that there isn't Fairtrade palm oil available at the moment. So there's not, I believe, a standard for Fairtrade palm oil. But we're aware there's a lot of issues with palm oil and sustainability. I will double check that, but I don't think we've got a Fairtrade standard on that at the moment.
Stefan, I did find out a little bit more because we were talking about this earlier. I think one of the issues with the palm oil is that they are very often monoculture crops, so they're not really grown by smallholder farmers. So very often they're massive multinationals, and I think probably it's going to be quite tricky in terms of actually getting any plantations that are not on deforested land, because it's very involved with destroying forests. So I don't think it's a crop that's very inclined to our fair trade principles because of its monoculture, because it's not grown by smallholder farmers, and because it's mainly being grown on deforested land. So, but it's something definitely there, but we're not doing it at the moment.
Yeah, good point. And I can see there's a question from Joe about do Fairtrade coffee and chocolate have smaller carbon footprints because they're grown regeneratively. I know there is some research going on at the moment into the carbon footprints of particular Fairtrade products. It's difficult to say across the board because it's so dependent. So much goes into what is a carbon footprint. So we can't really say Fairtrade products all have lower carbon footprints than the alternative, because there's so many factors and so many products that go into that. And what we can say is there is a lot in the Fairtrade standards around things like protecting biodiversity. That's something that smallholders have to do. They have to monitor and have a plan to lower carbon emissions. There's a lot about preventing water waste and protecting the local environment. So there's a lot in there on standards and in our standards on that. And yeah, we should have some more research in specific areas. So for example, Fairtrade flowers, I know there's some recent research that showed they do have a smaller carbon footprint than flowers that are growing in Europe. So yeah, look out for more on that. But yeah, that's the situation with those.
There was one more that I just wanted to address as well, which was, will this be the main theme for Fairtrade Fortnight? I don't know if Elena or Stefan had any thoughts on that, but I know that climate justice has been part of our narrative for maybe a couple of 3 or 4 sort of years in a row now. So, but I think this year we're looking at the 30th anniversary a lot as well. So I don't know if Stefan, maybe you've got a little bit more insight.
Yeah, I think it's certainly we'll be talking about this throughout the year. And as Sarah said, whereas maybe in the past we've kind of just had big campaigning moments around Fairtrade Fortnight, I think this year, and particularly with this campaign, we want to be speaking about it throughout the year. So absolutely, if you want to run a Fairtrade Fortnight event that is focused on this campaign and climate issues, please do. But there'll be lots of opportunities throughout the year as well. I'll just go back. I think there are 1 or 2 more pre-submitted ones that I thought might be good to touch on. Yeah, actually, we probably covered that one, which was about shade trees as well. So I can see, I'll just check if there's any other questions in the chat. But one of the other things that might be interesting to know about is just any plans people already have for this year. I appreciate you didn't hear about this campaign potentially until this evening. But I noticed Philip had put a plan in the chat. Philippa from Rainbow Turtle. I don't know if you're able to unmute and tell us a bit more about that, because that sounds really interesting.
Hi, yeah, I'm at Rainbow Turtle in Paisley, a Fairtrade shop, and I'm getting my head around being the education officer. But my passion is around gardening and also textiles, so it's kind of natural to me to think about just doing seed swap events. So I've created a living window in our shop full of plants, and trying to pick up on the article in Transform Trade about seed sovereignty and how farmers are forced to buy either GM seeds or hybrid seeds. I remember it from the 1990s, and I'm trying to get up to speed on it because I'm behind. So I'm really interested in sharing information, resources, seeds, and don't quite know how to do it, but really interested in connecting with people in the area, but also like with people more widely. So Glasgow Seed Library, which are based in the contemporary art space, have a fantastic resource where they're looking into land rights, and they have some online resources. So I'm really happy to share that and to connect with other people. So yeah, because I think for me, what's really interesting is connecting physically, like so going into schools and actually talking to kids who are actually growing some food, so they have a sense of what it is involved, and making the connection between local and global. So that's what I'm really interested in doing. So I'm not very good at organizing things, so I need help.
That sounds fantastic. Yeah, no, great stuff. And I know that, I don't know if you connect it, there is a Paisley is a Fairtrade community.
Yes,
So
yeah,
there is a group knocking around there that hopefully will be able to promote that.
yeah.
Great. No,
Thank
that's
you.
great. And the Transform Trade campaign is really interesting as well. Definitely encourage people
Yeah, I'd like to know
check it out.
more about that. Yeah. So, and I'm, reading people like Vandana Shiva and catching up on all her work and the kind of incredible work that people are doing in trying to save seeds and keeping hold of seed sovereignty. So it's a really fascinating topic. Yeah. But thank you for letting me.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, anyone else want to share plans or comments or questions? Feel free to just unmute at this stage and start speaking.
Hello, I'm Marianne Stevens. Our town council are going to renew their fair trade status, so they're organising a small fair, just a few, fair trade stalls in the town centre, and that's what I was asking, whether we could have the petition for that, because I'm actually on the churches group, which is, we still call it Make Poverty History. We've covered everything over like 30 years or more, so it includes fair trade. So that, we're going to have a stall there. And I know that I'm not the chair now, but, our chair said that, we could have videos there. So if we can use those videos, those stories, that would be really good. And I thought if we had a petition to go with it, that would be ideal. Some people might be able to sign up there, but we're not sure how the links will work, whether it's actually going to be a live link or whether we can just show videos because it's outside.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Great to hear. What's the name of your
Thornbury
Thornbury.
in South Gloucestershire. There's a couple of Thornburys, but we're the one in Gloucestershire. Yeah.
Excellent.
I don't think there's anyone else from I was looking at the names. I don't recognise anybody else's names, so I don't think any of the other people in the group are there.
Oh, that's brilliant. You can spread the word. But yeah, no, that's excellent. Sounds like a great event. And yeah, we always get quite a few signatures from offline as well. So yeah, we'll send out those stories will be with you next week, along with the videos. And we'll include the link to the printable version of the petition as well. And if you can send that back to us either by email or post, that'd be fantastic.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Lovely. Anyone else want to share plans or any final questions? Got a couple of minutes left.
I couldn't get you put it, I think you put in the chat, Stefan, a couple of links for us. And the second one, it was there and then it was gone so quickly, and I can't even see the chat at the bottom of my screen at the moment. So would it be possible, will it be going onto the website? Will it be going, those links, will they be on the website?
Yeah,
Pick them up there.
They will be there somewhere, but we will also send them all out when we send the email to everyone who signed up for this. So
that would be great. Thank you.
We'll be in there. As yeah, I appreciate it. The chat was quite busy at one point, so easy to lose it.
Okay, thank you.
Just can I just share something quickly? We're Belerno, Edinburgh, fair trade community, and we had, well, in the old fair trade fortnight time, we continue to have our big event because it fitted in much better for the schools to do their competition. Early September is not a good time to get teachers doing a competition. So we had this event and we invited some of the local green campaigners as well, who did a seed swap. And it was really encouraging because they were putting their bits on Facebook as well as us, and it got lots of people coming in for a seed swap that might not have come to the fair trade. And so we kind of shared, interests with them, and they also came in not just for the seed swap, but bought Fairtrade things. So that was just a spin-off, but it was good.
Yeah, no, thanks very much for sharing that.
Encouraged, yeah.
And it's exactly as Sarah mentioned earlier with Big Green Week, the theme is going to be swapping, and that work of connecting with our sustainability groups so we can swap knowledge is one of the things that I think would be brilliant if groups can do. So that's just a brilliant example of how that can work, and it was even seed swapping, so it was even more appropriate. Fantastic. I think we're just about at time. Some great comments in the chat as well about holding tarantulas. So, maybe we'll hear more about that next time. Pink-toed tarantula. But yeah, so I've learned a lot today. I hope some of you have learned something about our campaign as well. Thanks very much for joining, everyone. Anything else before we finish up, Sarah, Orlando?
No, just that all the resources and links will come to you in an email next week, probably. So if you've not caught anything right now, it'll be all in one place in your inboxes very soon.
Lovely. All right. Well, thanks very much for joining, everyone. Look forward to working with you more on this campaign, but have a great evening in the meantime. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.